high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Catholic. It's Kari, Janisse here, and once again I am here with my good friend Mike Walsh. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Kari. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. It's actually been a busy weekend for the Diocese of Camden in South Jersey. We graduated 5 high schools.
Wow. And I saw some of them on Instagram. It's 5, though. I didn't realize it was 5.
Yeah, it was 5. Well, the 5 diocesan high schools all graduated, which is wonderful because they were in session throughout the year.
Praise God.
Wearing their masks, keeping their distance, but did everything. You know, some extracurricular things couldn't happen. But even at the end of the school year, they were having school performances and stuff like that.
Proms. I saw a lot of the things going on, which is I'm so happy for the high schoolers. That's a rite of passage for them, and I'm glad they were able to have that.
Well, you and I both had to sort of live through it last year with just everything shut down, and it was painful.
Yeah.
But the joy that was evident out there was wonderful. The fact that the Catholic faith was on display at all 5 of these. I got to attend the last 3. I went to Camden Catholic High School, Paul VI High School, and Holy Spirit High School, and they were all great.
Was Holy Spirit on the beach for their graduation? I saw pictures and I was like, whoa.
So Holy Spirit High School is in Absecon,
right?
Which is
near Atlantic City.
Near Atlantic City,
coast,
and they were having a difficult time finding a space that was going to be large enough to accommodate what they wanted to do. So the president of the school happens to be the pastor at St. Joseph's in Sea Isle City.
Right.
So which is a very large seaside church. So he was kind enough to invite the entire graduation down, the graduating class and their parents, along with a live stream for anyone who couldn't make it to the thing. And then so they did it, but it's 1 block off of the beach. So they decided to process down at the end of all the exercises after the baccalaureate mass and everything. They processed down, they went to the beach, and they flew their caps up in the air. And
it was a great shot.
It really was.
It
was a wonderful thing. And the sunbathers, I have to give the sunbathers a lot of credit. They couldn't have been more appreciative.
Oh, that's good.
And they gave everybody a round of applause.
Yeah.
So it was really,
I think in that vein, everyone right now is just so happy to see these graduates be able to wear their cap and gown and be together. We all I think we've all come together in a great way as a society, as a nation, even as a world, to say this is exciting to be back together for events. I just had a big one on Sunday outdoors, and I was just like crying in tears, like I'm so happy we're having this. Well, and it's a nice night and everything. It was great.
You're absolutely right. Matter of fact, you should be crying right now too, because when is the last time we recorded in your youth lounge here in the basement?
And during the day.
And during the day.
It's not the evening or the late night.
Or anything like that.
I'm not crying, but I'm happy to be with you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm actually now a little disappointed you're not crying.
Right, I'm crying.
This is wonderful. But yes, I'm actually on the move. It's kind of nice. We keep talking about this return to normalcy and stuff like that, and this month is really when it's really felt
really
nice. But the truth of the matter is now you and I are in this whole new world where we're like, okay, how did I do my job a year and a half ago? What?
I know. I'm trying to redo it all. And there's still some changes, some hang-ups, right? So like the event I had on Sunday night normally is in our school gym. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? All right, well, everything's been rethought this year, so let's just rethink it in a new way. And honestly, a lot of the changes that have happened by rethinking my job post crazy lockdown times have been good changes. So I'm keeping a lot of them. So that's kind of nice too.
Well, that's just
a byproduct.
When you listen, every time something major happens in the world, there's changes that go with it. And if they're done well, usually what it provides is greater efficiency and the ability to expand what you've been able to do. And quite frankly, I would never have done utilize any of the communications tools that we did over the last year if the pandemic hadn't happened, which I'm not saying is a good thing, but I am glad that the silver lining of it is now myself included, and the staff of the Diocese of Camden's communications department have all these other skill sets that we can now use during normal times to do stuff. So we're very excited about that. So
being pushed out of our box is good sometimes.
It is. That's a great way of putting it. So, Kari, I'm very excited today.
I know. Maybe I'm crying now.
Of course. Bring our guest on and then you'll get...
I know. Well, I'm excited too because he's a good friend of mine from many years ago, meeting him at Daily Mass, and he's also well known.
He is well known. As a matter of fact, you want to give... Before we have him on, you give your perspective and I'll give my perspective.
So don't say his name.
No, you can say his name.
Oh, okay. So I'm very excited that we have Kerry Fraser with us today. So happy to be be with you, Kari. Thanks for joining us. He's a retired NHL referee, but amazing conversion story and just a great all-around guy. So welcome, Kari. Good to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Kari. Anytime I can be on with another Kari.
I know. This is going to be fun.
It's just an honor.
Yes, it is. But slight little differences in the spelling. I'm Kari. You're
Kerry, like the county in Ireland.
That's
okay,
right.
And I usually get your spelling sometimes on people trying to spell my name. I'm like, no, it's Kari. So
now here's the thing: is Kari has undersold Kerry a little bit.
So
Kari isn't just, wow, this is going to get tough. Kari isn't just a former NHL official. He's one of the most famous NHL refs of all time. Now, if you're not an NHL person, maybe you like a different sport. So I do not want to in any way, shape, or form insult Kari. I'm just going by famousness there. So
Mike,
if
you can't insult me. Trust me. All of the things I was called on the ice
That's a good point.
over 30 years, you can't hurt my feelings, man.
Well, if you're a baseball fan, then this is the equivalent of having Cowboy Joe West on the show. If you're an NFL fan, this is the equivalent of having Ed Hockley on the show today. If you're an NBA fan, it's the equivalent of having either Joey or Danny Crawford on the show today. Kerry Fraser was and still is, if I'm not mistaken, has the record for most regular season games reffed in the NHL, correct?
Correct.
He was an NHL ref starting in 1973, but your first majors games were in 1980?
Correct.
Okay. Up until 2010?
Finished last game Flyers-Rangers, shootout win by the Flyers that put them into the playoffs.
Very exciting for all of us. Also, ref the Olympics.
98 in Nagano, yes.
That's right. Converted to Catholicism in the mid-90s, correct?
That is correct.
That's right. Has had some, ref the Winter Classic as well.
That was Flyers Boston, 2010 New Year's Day in Fenway Park.
Cool.
One of my favorite Winter Classics of all time, as a matter of fact. Canadian by birth.
Hey, yeah.
But a resident of the United States now, and a South Jersey resident, more importantly, correct?
We're dual citizens,
That's
and
right.
yes, we moved in 1988 down here to South New Jersey, and love it.
Nice.
I'm happy to say he's our second NHL podcast that we're having. You may not know this, Kari.
Yes.
We had Johnny Gaudreau on a few years ago, a right winger for the Calgary Flames.
Right.
Great kid.
Yeah, great guy.
South Jersey guy, too.
And from my alma mater, Gloucester Catholic High School,
you go.
which is why he was in town. And then I'm going to leave out until maybe later we'll talk about 1993's Wayne Gretzky and the Maple Leafs, but that's a whole... The Maple Leafs were just knocked out of the playoffs, so maybe we won't bring that one up again.
Well, they're still in mourning.
I feel so bad for Leafs. I have friends with a lot of Leafs fans, and I'm like, sometimes it's hard to be a Flyers fan, but it's never going to be as bad as being a Leafs fan.
Sorry about your luck.
Every year. At any rate, so Kari, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Mike,
So
It's
that's
an
your
honor.
perspective. I didn't get to give mine.
Well, I let you...
You said introduce him, so I did. But here's mine. Daily Mass communicant. Okay, that's how I met him. So we're going to go the religious end. You went the sports end, which was very, very well done.
The guy thing.
I'm just like sitting here like, okay, I know some of these things, some of them I don't. I mean, I follow sports, but not like my husband. But Daily Mass communicant, amazing conversion story, love of the Blessed Mother, and just a true all-around, genuine, good Catholic man that really, really do appreciate your sharing of your faith, because you spoke a few times to some of my youth and young adult groups, and
Thank you, Kari.
they are some of the greatest memories from our groups.
Well, thank you for that, and it's always a work in progress with all of us, and every day is a challenge, and we have to put Our Lady and her Son in the forefront, and follow them.
Amen to that.
And I've been a leader. Like I'm big time type A. You're going to find out when we start chatting here. I had some serious type A issues. I'm a control freak. Hence, maybe not a bad referee, decent referee because of.
Yeah, sure.
Play my way or the highway. I had a box over there called a penalty box you're going to sit in if you don't do it my way. But God had a call. He had a plan. He kept calling me. And I wasn't listening until finally he knocked me off my horse like St. Paul on the road to Damascus. And we can get to that, but boy, I'll tell you, it's, you talk about 93, me missing the call and Western Conference final with the Leafs and the LA Kings. Wayne Gretzky, Doug Gilmour, captain of both respective teams, and it was in overtime, Game 6, and puck went down, and Wayne took a shot, and then the puck deflected off a defenseman's leg. It was Jamie McCowan, the D-man, right back to where Doug Gilmour and Gretzky were standing from the face-off, and there was a reach or movement of Wayne's stick, and I got blocked, or I blinked. I didn't see it. I thought maybe it was a shot follow through, and Doug Gilmour grabbed his chin. I stopped the play. Gilmour was bleeding. I missed it. I said, and his nickname was Killer. I said, Killer, what happened? He said, well, Wayne took a shot and his follow through hit me in the chin. I said, well, if that's the case, that's not a penalty. Yeah. That's the one exemption. And something didn't smell right, though. It just didn't smell right, because Wayne was usually the first guy to over there pleading a case if he thought he was going to get a penalty, or one of his teammates. And he was just off to the side. He slinked away. And I gathered my two linesmen. I said, guys, help me. I didn't see it. Did anybody see a high stick there? We didn't get an affirmative, and I had to eat the call, not knowing. And sure enough, about 5-6 replays later, it showed that Gretzky had reached, clipped Gilmour on the chin. No call. Toronto was killing a penalty at that point because Glenn Anderson had tried to run Rob Blake's head through the boards, and I had him in the penalty box. And this is in overtime, and very next series of plays, Gretzky scores the winning goal. Game over. They go to Game 7 in Toronto, and Gretzky had what he admitted was the best game of his career. They eliminated the Leafs in 7 games. Leaf fans, literally, hate is a strong word. I know that there were Leaf Nation, many of their fans, hated me over missing that call. And even their next generation that weren't even born yet have been handed.
I heard about that story.
It's been passed down. But we're human. We make mistakes, and certainly I admitted it. It doesn't bring back that play, but nonetheless, we move forward.
Yes, that's what we can
Kari,
do.
if you're not aware, that is actually probably one of the most famous non-calls, not just in NHL lore, but probably in sports of all kinds.
Doesn't that make you feel humble?
But it's one of those things that it's just nothing you can do about.
Yep,
I mean,
it happens.
It's easy for the fan to say it, but you're in the midst. I don't think people realize just how hard it is to call an NHL game. There's so much movement. Everything moves so quickly. That puck is small.
Well, let's think about it, guys. That's 93.
Yeah.
95 is when I finally answered the call that Christ and his mother have been leading me, calling me to. And there were a lot of things that in reflection I was being called, whether I was driving back from a game in Pittsburgh after, through the night, and very little on the radio, and yet I would be listening to some spiritual talk show. And as I was going through the mountains, it was like, oh, don't leave. I started to lose the station. Yeah. And it was just bizarre when I think back of all the times and things that were placed on my heart and in my ear that I didn't respond to until, bang, he really rocked me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Not so much your conversion right now, but let's talk about a little bit your past.
Sure.
So you grew up in Canada. You grew up outside of Toronto, right?
Actually 60 miles north of Detroit in a place called Sarnia, Ontario. It's a border city across from Port Huron, Michigan. A bridge, just like the one here in Philly, connects both sides, Jersey and Pennsylvania, and or Camden and Philly, if you will. Yeah. And my father was a minor league professional hockey player. He was a boxer. He played in Scotland 1 year when he was 19, and then came back, met my mom. They married. They had me. He still was playing minor pro hockey at that time. He was a harsh dude. He provided well for a blue-collar guy, but he was really a tough guy. Back in the days when he played, he would have been called a goon. He was a fighter, and he brought that sort of trigger personality into our household. I started playing youth hockey at 5 years old. I was skating at 15 months.
Wow. That's tough. I just took my 3-year-old ice skating for the first time.
Yeah.
Mom, it's slippery. I was like, I want to get you out here. And we've taken him skiing, and he did okay. So I thought, all right, being on the ice is kind of similar to skiing, but
The blades are a little longer on the skis, I gotta tell you.
It's definitely not the same, but wow, that's impressive. You said 15 months.
15 months. Dad would take me to his hockey practices.
Barely
They practiced
walk, and
every
you're
day.
on the
Well,
ice.
as soon as I could walk, I was on skates. I was whacking a puck around when I could stand up in the kitchen. And so I was a hockey nut, and I played on all of the travel AAA All-Star teams. I was a good little player. Very small, never grew, but I was instilled a toughness from my dad. And you know what? Think about yourselves. We all, and listeners, for you especially, think of the things that you acquired as through your household, even through generational sort of genetics that, and I know that I have some of my dad in me, and his fiery temper and his aggressiveness. And I dislike bullies. My dad taught me how to fight. He was also a boxer. He taught me how to take care of business, or myself, in the kitchen of our home. And I was 12 years old, and I'll never forget it. He said, "Get your hands up." And I was a left-handed guy, and my hands went up, and boom, boom, right in the head, knocked me down with an open slap. I got back up. He said, "Get your hands up." I must have gone down about 3 or 4 times with an open slap. And, you know, today you would call it child abuse. But back then it was about learning how to compete in a big man sport. And I played for Dad for 3 years in AAA Midget. We won all Ontario championships. We played against many, many guys that went on to play in the NHL in our area. And actually 4 or 5 of our players played in the NHL. I happened to take a different route. You know, after playing junior A hockey, and I fought a lot because of the aggressiveness of the game at that time in the early 70s, and I disliked bullies big time. So I always fought the biggest guy on every team, and I could do pretty well, and then I created space for myself. Here's the transition, though. I had a whole bunch of U.S. scholarship offers to D1 schools when I finished playing Junior A. I was the captain of our team in Sarnia in the Junior A League, and I was engaged to be married, which was absolutely foolish. I was 19 years old, and it was a huge mistake. And even walking down the aisle, I knew it was a mistake. But I was committed. I didn't have the courage to pull away from it. Right. And you know, there were 3 wonderful little boys created from that initial union, and but I didn't take the college route for that. I could have played in the minor professional leagues. I wasn't drafted by the NHL. I was too little, good little player. And then I decided, at the recommendation of a friend that was coaching in the International Hockey League and coached the Detroit Red Wings, Ted Garvin, played with my dad pro. He said, "Listen, you're really a good little player, but you're not going to make it to the NHL. You can play in our league, you can probably play in the American League, but you're going to get hurt. You're a little guy, and you play big." He said, "Why don't you go to a referee school? Here's a brochure. We need guys refereeing that understand the game and have played to a good level."
There it is.
So I paid $250. I went to a referee camp in 1972 in late August. I was scouted at that camp, and I ended up 2 days later at the NHL training camp for officials. It was a 10-day camp. This was after a honeymoon, and immediately to this referee camp, and then to the NHL training camp for 10 days, and then they put me in exhibition games, and they signed me to a contract. So things happened very quickly. But let's remember, I was this tough little dude that didn't take guff from anybody. I was type A, little man syndrome, chip on the shoulder, and now all of a sudden I go from being the aggressive player to a guy with the stripes on, the authority in a game that is supposed to be the peacemaker. I'm supposed to be part of the solution in a game and not the problem. So I had some learning curves, and in an incident with Wayne Gretzky and Bobby Clark and the Philadelphia Flyers in 1980, in that very first season, 3 weeks into it, I had a profound experience that taught me I had to look at my failings, my flaws of not so much character, but there were a lot of character flaws too. But that chip on the shoulder sort of thing that was going to prevent me from succeeding as a referee while it provided me, decent talent as a player, it was going to cause me to fail as a ref.
Yeah. And so that was a big moment for you.
It was a big turning point,
in your
and of
career.
course, with Wayne Gretzky, I mean, he's a young guy. He's that whole team, Edmonton Oilers, Mark Messier, a whole bunch of future Hall of Famers, and Wayne had already won the scoring championship in his first year, tied with Marcel Dion, and that was the next season, 3 weeks in, and he took a dive in the very first shift of the game, trying to draw the fans against me. Mm-hmm. We didn't have a diving penalty back then, so it was when he took that first flip, like 10 seconds into the game after I dropped the puck, I thought, okay, buddy, you're going to play on your knees tonight. I'm going to teach you a lesson. And I did. I never called a darn thing all night. And Wayne is the one of 2 players that ever thanked me for giving them a penalty. Wow. And it was at the end of that game.
How about that?
Yeah, when Bobby Clarke was on the ice and Flyers were up by 1 goal, and I had called nothing on Gretzky when he had been fouled, and which was a flaw of mine. And Pelle Lindbergh, the goalie for the Flyers, God rest his soul, caught the puck. I blew the whistle, stopped play with a minute and change left, and Flyers up by 1. Gretzky behind the net, in his office, they called it. He jumped in the air, threw his hands out one way, his feet the other way, boom, did a belly flop on the ice. Yeah. Bobby Clarke skated over with no teeth. He said, "Get up, Gretzky, you blank baby." I went over, I said, "Wayne, what are you doing?" I said, "There wasn't a guy within 15 feet of you." He said, "You wouldn't have called it anyway. You haven't called a blank thing all night." I said, "You're right. I'm going to start right now." And I teed him up. I went, boom, you got 2 for unsportsmanlike conduct. He said, "Thanks. It's about blank time you called something," and he stormed off the ice. Now, the moral of that long story is that every game I ever did, I went back into my hotel room and I reflected on what I could have done better, even if the game went fine. Yeah. Perfectionist.
It's good.
It hit me between the eyes like a hockey stick. I got involved in an emotional battle with a player. I let my attitude take over, my aggressiveness, my chip on the shoulder, my little man, syndrome, Napoleon. And I recognized in that moment that I had to change me. I had to feel that emotion inside me that started to boil at times in a confrontation with a player in a very aggressive sport, and I had to suppress it. I had to work on controlling me so that I could control what was going on the ice. The very next game I saw Wayne, I apologized to him.
How about that?
I said, "I'm sorry. I was way wrong." I said, "Please, let's start again. But do me a favor, don't fall down easy."
Well, Kari, the sort of the moral of what Kari was telling us. This is going to get confusing, and I do apologize to the listeners. But that's something you actually work with your youth, that sort of self-reflection a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of their spirituality.
And
right?
I was even thinking of St. Ignatius when you were saying that self-reflection. He teaches about us reflecting on our day. It's very Ignatius, and. Yeah, it's definitely something that is taught within the faith, very much so, especially with the youth, because in a way, in the years of their younger time of high school and especially college is when a lot of moral decisions are made, and they're made on their own, right? Mom and dad aren't looking over your shoulder saying, do this, do that. They're just making them on their own. So those are very pivotal times in one's faith journey during those young years that forming that moral compass is important, and that reflection is such a big part of it.
And as Kari just proved, it's not just the purview of the youth. It's really something that our entire adult lives have really got to be something that we're looking back on, right?
Very true.
Well, we have a choice. Every decision we make, we have a choice. And following my conversion, the call that I finally received or acted on, I learned that in the hockey scenario, I was a player on the field, on the ice. And I could play for Christ, or I could play for the other guy. And I could play for both at the same time because of my human weakness. I could score a goal for one or the other. And I wanted to put the points up on the right side of the scoreboard. And so that made me think about everything that I was, any decision I made, we have free will, And I'll tell you, the road to my Damascus, which was the drive to Pittsburgh for my very first game in 1995, where I had the first mystical experience occur, I was a mess prior to that. 1993 was the call. A fan drove 180 kilometers from Kitchener, Ontario to drive into the back of my dad's mini motorhome after the game.
No way.
Yeah, my dad chased him up the street with an axe and chopped at the back of his car. And the reason they found this guy, after I heard the story from my dad the next day, I called NHL security, and they found the guy's car in a body shop in Kitchener, Ontario, and he admitted being a Leafs fan and that he wanted to inflict damage on Kerry Fraser's family home.
Wow.
My mom was getting obscene phone calls, wicked, foul language.
Wow.
And over this call that I missed, it was bigger than life. And so my mom she was great. She was a tough bird. She was the only lady in the house, and my brother and I and Dad, and I gave her a whistle, one of my NHL whistles. She tied it on a skate lace like the good hockey mom, and whenever an obscene phone call would come in, she'd blow the whistle loud as she could in the earpiece, the mouthpiece of the phone. The call subsided. We had to put Mom in a nursing home. Dad passed away in 2001, and Mom had dementia and moving towards Alzheimer's, and we had to move her into a nursing home. And so Brother Rick and I cleaned out the home we grew up in, and there was that whistle still hanging on the skate lace by the phone on a hook. Yeah.
Wow.
That had to be a memory for you, touching your heart right there, looking back at that.
Now, Kari, we're talking a lot about Toronto sports fans right now. It occurred to me as Kari was telling a story, 1993 wasn't that terrible for all of Toronto because while the Toronto Maple Leafs lost that series, and you were living up in North Jersey at the time, so you probably don't care as much. But for me, 1993 was a traumatic sports year. That was also the year Toronto defeated the Phillies on a walk-off home run by Joe Carter. And even now, as I'm telling the story, I'm going, boy, I really hated that. Why did they not pull Mitch Williams? But anyway, so let's not feel terrible for Toronto at this moment right now.
All right, I feel for you too.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the process then of, we've talked a little bit about your road to Damascus here. And, so you talked, you felt the call a couple of, often. It was in the back of your mind. What kind of, was that? What do you think it was? Not just that you had this traumatic event 2 years earlier, but why do you think God was sort of speaking to you this whole time? Maybe that's because of what he does.
Absolutely. And, he chose me. I didn't choose him. And he chooses all of us. He wants us for his own. He wants our heart. He wants us to be saints. He wants us to live with him forever and ever in infinity.
Amen.
And boy, I'll tell you, I was a mess.
Yeah.
I was a mess. 93 was the call. 94, NHL officials went on strike. I was the one guy on our executive that was in the United States, and I took on the commissioner, Gary Bettman, in the media. I won that battle, but man, did I lose the war. That was the year that the New York Rangers won the Stanley Cup. I had an awesome year back on the ice once we got back from the strike. And I was rated number 1 under their rating system. I breezed through the playoffs. I did Game 6 that Mark Messier promised a win in the Jersey series in the Eastern Conference Finals. I had an awesome game, West and East. And then I was dropped from the playoffs. And the assistant director of officiating, Wally Harris, a longtime referee, called me and he said, and we had a sailboat. I was down in Chesapeake on the boat. He said, "You're on your boat?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you can cast the lines off and go sail and you're not working the finals." I said, "Wally, you got to be kidding me." I said, "You guys rated me number 1. He said, "Yeah, you were great. You had a great year." And he said, "You need to be proud of the fact that the way you represented your guys in the strike and we got minor league referees doubled their salaries, and it was a win, but I was the casualty." And he said, Commissioner Bettman said that under no circumstance were you to work the Stanley Cup Finals.
Wow.
So it was a payback, and you have to live with it. But that was a brick that I put on my back in addition to other things. And whenever we have difficult times in our life, and men, listen to this very carefully, because we then tend to take out our frustrations and our stresses on our family members, the ones that are closest to us, the ones that we realize are going to be there through thick and thin. And that's what happened in my household. We had 3 girls from Kathy's previous marriage, and Kathy is my saint. She is the first time that I ever fell in love and found out what love and commitment were all about. She is incredible. She had 3 girls, I had 3 boys. We were the Brady Bunch. We got married, we moved down to New Jersey in Flyer territory, and I bought Mike Keenan's house, former coach of the Flyers. When he got fired, went off to Chicago, and we're having a happy life. And then we have our little girl together 2 years later, Kara, who's now 31, just about. And life is good, we think, but all these other things start happening, and you blend 2 marriages and children, and there can be a stressor. And we had 2 middle kids. We had a middle boy and a middle girl in this group. The middle girl, Jessica, she is like me. She's type A. She was the tornado in the household, and she was the one where all my anger, she was the lightning rod. And if she showed disrespect and she would act out poorly, boom, I'd be right on it. So fast forwarding, in 95 in the summer at the end, with all this other stuff going on professionally and taking it out on Jess in the house, and the more she acted out to get attention, it got worse. And finally, I was heading off to Calgary to my referee school that summer, and I said, the night before I left, big blow up with Jess, and she's hopping around like a lunatic. She had a fear. Her maternal father had emotionally abused Jess, and so there was that element. But I thought and said to Kathy, listen, I can't take this anymore. I'm flying off to Calgary in the morning. I want you to call the NHL hotline, the Employee Assistance Program, confidential hotline, and I want you to find a counselor here that can fix this kid, because I don't know if I can take it anymore. Nothing wrong with me, right? No. It was the kid.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how it always goes.
I have a little statue here of the Blessed Mother in my hand. I wish this was also video. But it's the Blessed Mother that my wife Kathy had as a little girl. And she knelt after I left before this little statue of the Blessed Mother, crying, sobbing, pleading in prayer. Please, Blessed Mother, help this family, help my husband, help my daughter. I love my husband, I love my daughter, but you're a mother too, and please help us. And then she made the call. She made the call to the Employee Assistance Program that connected her in Montreal to a counselor. She talked for an hour, identifying our problem in the household. The counselor said, I get it. I'm going to give me a day or two, and I'm going to connect you with a counselor in your area that can deal specifically with your problems as we identify them. I'm off in Calgary. I get a call 2 days later. Kathy says, listen, they called back and they want to send us over to Philadelphia to somebody. I said, forget it. We're not crossing the bridge. Rush hour traffic. I'm controlling again, right? I said, no. Call them back. Get somebody in our area in South Jersey. Boom. Call comes back. We have a guy who lived right around the corner from us, from our home, near the Jersey Hospital, and his name is David. I will save his last name. And he's a marriage counselor and a social something or other. I said, Kath, we don't need a marriage counselor, but tell you what, he's round the corner. Let's give him a shot. And if we don't like him, we'll just call and get somebody else. Now, the night before we had this scheduled appointment, after I get back from Calgary, I was out of control. I was angry. I said, I had an argument with my dear wife, and I'm driving the car, and 2 kids are sleeping in the back seat from the boat. And I said, I'm not going to that darn meeting. You can go. There was something that wanted to keep me from going there. There was a force, and I'll tell you, that force met me. And the next day, she dragged me into this meeting, and I'm sitting closed off. I'm my arms crossed and back to Kathy in this waiting room, and out came this meek little mild guy named David. And he said, "Hi, my name's David." And he extended his hand. And I rolled my eyes like, oh boy, this guy's going to help me, right? We went in, and he started very quickly telling us, taking down information, previous marriages, children, blah, blah, blah. Then he put his pen down. He said, "Now let me tell you something about myself." He said, "Things just pop into my head. I don't know where they come from." Yeah, right. But I just blurt things out. And he said, "I'll give you 3 examples." And he did. And the last one, each one started to open me up until finally, this last story he told was about a husband and wife that were trying to adopt children, and they'd exhausted all North American supply, and it was causing a problem in their marriage. He said, they sat down just like you. I took information. As I did, I put the pen down, and I said, something popped into my head. He said, "You have nothing to fear. You have to have your passports ready to travel. You're going to, on such and such a day," gave them the date, "you're going to be asked to travel to Russia. You're on a date he gave them, you're going to then meet your adoptive children, siblings, in Moscow. They're very close to the Blessed Mother, Virgin Mary, and when you bring them back to North America, be sure to keep them close to the church." He said, this couple looked at me like I had 2 heads. They didn't even stay for the rest of the session. They got up and left. He said, the follow-up. On the date that I said she would receive a call, she called me, the lady. She said, "David, I just got a call." He said, "I know. Do as you were asked." And on each of those dates, everything came to pass. On the day that they were told to meet their adoptive children, they walked into an orphanage in Moscow, and there, standing in the foyer at the foot of a large statue of the Virgin Mary, were 2 little kids holding a shopping bag with their worldly possessions in them. Wow. I said, that is incredible. He said, "Now, would you like to have," and he told me things about my childhood that I didn't tell him. He just told me. He said, "Is there can we make another appointment?" I said, "David, why stop? Can we keep going?"
Yeah.
I was ready. He gave me a cassette. He said, we made an appointment for next week. He gave me a cassette. He said, "I gave this church a talk at a church, Catholic church, after I came back from a place called Medjugorje." I had no idea what Medjugorje was. Now we all know, but I didn't. And I listened to this tape, and I was home alone. Kath was off with the kids, and I listened to the tape, and it was an incredible story. He talked about events happening, at Apparition Hill and at St. James over in Medjugorje, and the children the Virgin Mary appeared to, and I wanted to tape this thing. So we had a double-sided machine, play, record. And as soon as I started to tape this talk that told of many, many events, the machine started eating the tape, and room turned ice cold. Wow. I felt a breath on the back of my neck. I was visited, and I know who it was. He had me, and he didn't want to let go. I grabbed this little statue of the Blessed Mother, and after leaving David's office the first time, I said to Kathy, for some reason, I want to go buy a rosary. And I had this rosary, Irish bogwood, that sent a chill through my hand as I picked it up at the St. Jude shop. And I started praying the Hail Marys as fast as I could. The room warmed up. The machine stopped eating the tape. I went back to David the next week. I said, "David, here's your tape back. The strangest thing happened." He said, "Did your machine try to eat the tape?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "It happens all the time." He said, "The evil one does not want this message to be heard." That's who visited me that night in our bedroom. And the everything flowed from there very quickly. I had a rapid conversion of heart. I led, David was counseling and spiritual coordinator. And listeners, you have to understand now, these things that popped into David's head, on his tape, it said that after getting back from Medjugorje, he was sitting having breakfast in an IHOP. He had a miracle of the sun occur. He thought, wow, that's nice, nice little gift. And he's driving to his office. And all of a sudden, a voice spoke in his ear. It was what we call a locution. Mm-hmm. It's an inner voice. And the voice said, David, my son Jesus has a mission for you. If you accept it, know that you will be asked to suffer as my son did. But you will be the salvation of many souls and marriages. He just about drove into a tree. Wow. It was a shock. Mm-hmm. And he took and accepted the mission. He was given Crohn's disease very quickly.
It's tough.
He is still around. I still call him. Mm-hmm. He's retired, but what a blessed man. And I can tell you, we often wonder if we have our prayers are being heard. He would start each session with a prayer, and when he would receive a locution, he would just be kind of tilting his head and listening like we might do, and then out would come whatever it was that he was told. I had Kathy beside me. We started a session one time, and I had a son that was having difficulties. And I started to pray to the Blessed Mother, privately, quietly, 5 quick, separate questions that I needed help with. And David is starting his prayer to start the session. As soon as I prayed that question, boom, she told him, it came out of his mouth right to me. Wow. 5 times. So I said to Kathy, sitting beside me after that little interlude at the start of the session, I said, we often wonder, are our prayers being heard? I just had a 3-way conversation. Me to Our Lady, to David, back to me with direction. Yeah. So don't ever think your prayers aren't being heard. Sometimes they're just not compatible with what they want upstairs.
It's true. That's true. Wow, that was incredible. And I know I've heard that before. It's been a little while, but just to hear it and with the emotion and detail you tell it. It's
like, why me?
Yeah.
That was exactly the question that was kind of going through my head. Not so much a question, but just thinking about life in general. And I think everybody gets what they need, right? In some way, because, God always provides. Sometimes we just don't realize that that's what we need. I'm sure you were looking for your faith and spirituality completely. I mean, you saw how much you fought against the idea of going to a counselor and then this entire world. And who would have thought you had to fight with the NHL medical resources team to not go to Philly, to go to that guy, and that guy is where you end up. You end up with David, and then you have this entirely new path that would never have happened had you been more less acerbic, maybe the way to go to put it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I opened up. My heart opened up. It was cracked. My heart was hardened. And it took the call constantly. And then all of a sudden, hey, here's one of my worker bees out here that you're going to see. And your wife, one of the messages from Our Lady was to David, Kari, you have to listen to your wife. And
that's a good message.
She's got a pathway here that I'm using her, so you need to listen to her. Yeah. And you know what else happens though, guys? When we get closer to the light, the darkness is there. It's lurking. It's waiting to pounce. 1995. Great things happen for me that God calls me and shows me things, and a miracle of the sun on that road to Pittsburgh for 15 minutes as I'm driving in rush hour traffic, and boom, I think the world's coming to an end. And he revealed some things in that sun that started with a baby like an ultrasound in a mother's womb, and we're talking abortion here, and it was profound, and the sun looked like it was going to gyrate and come right into my windshield. And then 2 hearts, perfectly shaped, one above the other, attached with a beat that beat in unison 3-dimensionally outside those 2 hearts. Wow. And all of a sudden I'm driving in rush hour traffic, and I'm thinking, oh man, I got to check the road because it's out my driver's side window in this bright sun that all of a sudden now I'm looking into the sun like it's opaque with an egg with a flashlight on it. And I'm seeing these things. I'm crying. I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm thanking God for showing me this. And then I thought, oh my God, the traffic. I'm like rush hour. on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I had been in bumper-to-bumper traffic 3 sides. All of a sudden now, I'm in a safety zone. There's like 30 car lengths space around this vehicle of mine.
Wow.
And I look back, and the car is literally, I would say, is driving itself. I check occasionally. And then I saw a sign. It said, emergency pull-off. And I saw a break in the trees. And I thought, oh, perfect. Now I don't have to worry about checking the traffic. I'm going to pull over, and I'm going to cake all this in. Well, as soon as I pulled off,
That's it.
boom, it went right back to bright sun, and now I got the 30 car lengths closing, pedal to the metal, back on the highway, and the most amazing peace came over my heart. And I'm a head thinker. This came to my heart, and it was peace that I have never felt in my life. And I went, Lord, I am so sorry. I tried to take over. I wanted to be in charge. You're in charge. Thank you for that beautiful gift.
Wow.
And boom, it went right back to the sun spinning, gyrating, and immediately the 2 hearts beating for another 5 to so minutes. And then I saw a sign that said Service Center 1 mile, and I felt in my heart that it was going to end. And sure enough, just before that, it did. I pulled in, numb. Doubting Thomas took over. I grabbed some aviator sunglasses over the visor to look at the sun. Boom, I couldn't, it was too bright. And I went, thank you. And that started the journey. But where there's light, there's darkness. And there were a lot of things that came my way that I had to make a good decision on how to handle. One of them was a major confrontation with a player named Theo Fleury. Theo Fleury was a feisty guy, and he had some issues for sure. And he actually challenged me to go outside in the parking lot in '96 in a playoff game. Challenged me to fight. Took his helmet off. He called me every foul name you can think of, threw his helmet at me, and I threw him out of the game in Chicago in a playoff game. 4 years later, he signed a 1-year deal with the New York Rangers, free agent, for $8 million. The league put him into the substance abuse program. He didn't start the season. December 19th of 2000, 4 years after this challenge and cursing at me and throwing the helmet at me. At the end of the first period, it's the first game back from the substance abuse program, and he had tears in his eyes. He met me at the red line. He said, Kerry, don't let him talk to me like that. I'm trying to turn my life over, honest. I haven't done, and he mentioned Coke, I haven't done drinking in X number of months. He said, don't let him talk to me like that. I said, who, what? He said, Tyson Nash for the St. Louis Blues. At the end of the period, there was a scrum, and he trash-talked Theo about his drug substance abuse.
That's tough.
Now, I had a decision to make, right?
Yeah.
I could have said, how'd you like it? Looks good on you. Human nature would be payback, right? I saw a wounded human being in front of me, and I wanted to take his pain away. I felt like one of my kids was standing there in pain. And I said, Theo, if I can get Tyson Nash back here at the start of this next period, right here at the red line, Madison Square Garden, between the 2 benches, and if he gives you a sincere apology, will you accept it like a man? He said, I will.
This is in the NHL. Wow.
I went right into the coach's room, Joel Quenneville, coaching the St. Louis Blues in 2000. I told him what happened, what his player Tyson Nash had said. He rolled his eyes. He said, do you want me to tell him to take his gear off? He thought I was going to throw him out of the game. I said, Joel, what about an apology? It certainly would be good for Theo, and it might not even hurt your guy. He said, great idea. He ran into the player's room. I'm waiting with Theo at the start of the next period as the St. Louis Blues came out of the Zamboni entrance at Madison Square Garden. And Tyson looked like he wanted to do a skate by. I flagged him over. I said, do you have something to say to this man? And his lip was quivering. He was affected by it. Wow. And he said, Theo, I am sincerely sorry. I went way below the line, and I apologize. I wish you all the best in everything you have ahead of you. He tapped him on the shin pad, and I said, Theo, are you good with that? He said, I'm good with that. I said, boys, shake hands, let's play.
Wow.
2010, I'm sitting down to write my book, and Theo trashed me in his book, Playing with Fire. And I wanted to take a bad situation and turn it good. That was my objective from 95. Make it right.
Reconciliation.
Absolutely. So I called Tyson Nash. He's out in Phoenix. And I said, hey, Tyson, Kari here. I'm writing a book. I'd like your permission to share a story. Do you recall the situation with Theo Fleury in December 19th of 2000 in Madison Square Garden? Guys, the phone went dead quiet. He said, Kari, that was a life-altering situation. It was career-changing.
Oh, wow.
I got him to tell me about it in his own words, and I added it in the book. Those guys have talked about it ever since, both Theo and Tyson Nash. It was a life-altering situation. Here's the moral. It happened with a simple apology. We have a choice, people. We can do the right thing or we can do the wrong thing. Free will. Think about it and score one for the right team.
Amen. That's beautiful.
I love to hear that. I really do. Particularly when you could. That is not a story I would expect to hear taking place at the center line in Madison Square Garden. That is just absolutely amazing. And you think back in the day that wouldn't have been something you necessarily would have done?
Well, I did it in other situations. I probably wouldn't have done it prior to 95. Wow. There were other guys that were trash talked. One, Claude Lemieux, playing for the Jersey Devils, won the Conn Smythe Trophy as the most valuable player that year. He came to me with tears in his eyes, crying at a stoppage of play in the Meadowlands. And he said, Kari, I'm going through a very nasty divorce. Don't let Matthew Barnaby talk about that. He talked about my wife real bad. Yeah. Now, I had another situation to make a decision on. Do I say toughen up or, it's not my problem. I called Matthew Barnaby over. I said, did you say those things about his wife? Barnaby, silver tooth flashed up. He had an angelic smile with horns growing out of the back of his head. We had quite a relationship. And he said, yeah, I said those things. I said, you apologize to this man right now or I'm throwing you out of the game.
Wow.
Amazing.
He said, you can't do that. I said, try me. I'll do it. And so he went, I'm sorry. I said, no, Matthew, not good enough. I want sincere. So he gave a second effort. And I said to Claude, you okay with that? He said, yeah, I'm good with that. He skated away. And I read the riot act to Matthew Barnaby. I said, don't ever let me hear you talk about another man's family in a conversation on the ice. I said, I'll turf you.
You don't think about these things happening with grown men and
That's
grown
exactly
adults.
what I was thinking.
And the
and
truth of the
grown
matter,
NHL, hockey player,
yeah,
man.
now
These
that
are tough guys, and yet their hearts.
Yeah. Now, as a Flyers fan, I hate both of those guys, so I can really care less.
Well,
but
it's win at all costs, right?
That's right. If you don't wear orange and black, I really don't like it. But no, I'd love to hear stories like that. I think too often we think that kindness only takes place in special moments, in the privacy of your own home. But no, you can actually do stuff out in public and be kind to each other.
Take it to your workplace, Mike.
Absolutely.
Take it to your workplace. Everywhere you go, you can make a difference. And it can be the simplest thing. You can make somebody's day brighter. Maybe just a good morning with a smile or open the door.
True.
We don't know where other people are at in their life.
That's a good
Very
point.
true. It's very true. And those little small acts of kindness, look at what you said, years later, it still comes
Holy
back
Communion.
to the biggest moment.
Receiving the Eucharist, oh my God, it's the best way to start the day. It sustains me. From 95 to 2001 until I was accepted into the church, I started going to daily Mass. I couldn't receive. And Kathy would, at Mass with the kids, she would tear up when it was time for the girls to go receive communion. I didn't get it until 95. And then I asked for spiritual communion, and I would feel his hand on my heart. He touched me, and I would weep. Not because I was sad at not receiving, but because he called me. He could forgive me, a huge sinner. I was spiritually bankrupt, and yet he called me.
And that's how it happens.
It's amazing. God's love.
We're
healing, God's forgiveness.
That's a good thing to remember as we wrap up the podcast right now, is that hearing these kinds of stories. We have a lot of people on that no one's ever heard of before. Now we have somebody on that every NHL fan has heard of. And if you're wondering, for our listeners, Kari was famous for his head of hair, and it's still a beautiful head of hair. It's still a beautiful head of hair.
That's overrated.
But it's true, and I hope people will take that away. Now, Kari does a lot of speaking engagements around the country, and we're actually hoping to see one in South Jersey very soon. More on that, so you'll be hearing about later. But if you ever get the opportunity to read his book, hear his life story, and there's a lot that's happened since he retired in 2010 as well, which unfortunately we don't have time to get onto. But look up his story. If you hear about his speaking engagement, I really encourage you to come to it because as you heard today, there's a lot more there, and I think you'll be really touched by it. So.
And you said you're on Twitter too. What's your Twitter handle?
At Kerry Fraser, the call.
Nice. Love it. Kari, thank you so much. It's been a joy to have you on and reconnect with you in many different ways.
Kari, you and Mike do wonderful work. May God bless you, and it continues.
You too. God bless our listeners.